Test, test. At the podium, test. Sweet.
So use your outside voice inside.
Yeah, I'll just try not to scream into it. Yes, sir. Alrighty.
As long as we understand how that works.
You guys ready to go? Roger. All right. Good morning, members of the command, staff, students, and family members. I am Chief Warrant Officer Corriere, Gunner's Mate School Chief, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies today. I do ask that you please silence your mobile phones and other electronic devices. On behalf of Captain Ray and Training Center Yorktown, we thank you for taking time out of your day to witness Training Center Yorktown's final Mark 75 gun weapon system and Mark 92 fire control system C School graduations. Will the guests please rise for the arrival of the official party? Master Chief Joe Liu, Mark 92 School Chief. Master Chief Dave Dolphin, Command Master Chief, Training Center Yorktown. Chief Warrant Officer Cole Vasky, Chief of Training for Gunner's Mates and Electronics Technicians. Commander Amalia Boyer, Branch Chief, Engineering and Weapons. Commander Victor Galgano, Chief, Training Division. Captain Scott Ray, Commanding Officer, Training Center Yorktown. Please be seated. At this time, I would like to invite Captain Ray to the podium to share his remarks.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Wow, big day here in Yorktown. It's my second time here to the Taylor Hall Gun Deck. We graduated some Gunner's Mates this morning, so we made some GM3s this morning, and then we rushed off and made some MK3s, and then we did an award ceremony, and then we paused, went and met with the USO, and now we're here for a ceremony here. So every day in Yorktown, especially Fridays, big days. So when the team told me that we were going to soon sunset the Mark 75 and Mark 92 course, I said, okay, that means we're never doing it again. That's what sunset means, right? Like, yeah, when sunset goes down, but it does come back up. But we are going to sunset these two courses here today. And the team knows how I roll. I like to celebrate and do ceremonies and stuff, sometimes to the detriment of another one, Captain, really? But this one's really important, right? As you're going to hear some of the history, as you're going to hear from guest speakers today, these courses have been going on for a long time. Some of them more than 30 years. I think one of them almost 40 years, right? This gun has been sitting here since 1996, I think, if I was doing the math right. And soon, it's not going to be here, and it's going to get replaced with the next generation of weapons training, all of that stuff. So important that we celebrate today our graduates for the last time, right, which is pretty amazing. Our shipmates from Sri Lanka have been here a while. We see you every day on campus, and we're going to miss you. But it's great to always see you and always see your smiling faces and always your optimism. But I bet you're ready to go, right? I bet it's time to go, and you're ready to go. But we're going to miss you. But what a better fitting way than to finish the Mark 75 course with our 5 shipmates from Sri Lanka, and then our 3 Coast Guard members here celebrating to graduate the last time the Mark 92 course, right? It's a long course. You've been with us for a while. I guess I heard you're staying with us even longer to continue on with your training. So having said all that, this is really an important day that we're celebrating not only the graduates, but that we're putting to rest, celebrating a history of these 2 courses here in Yorktown. And I think that's especially important to capture that moment. We've got video going on here. So I'm very, very happy and proud to be here today to be with all of you to do this. I know nothing about these guns and nothing about the training that you've done. I'm a BOSA mate, so I don't know how that works. I just pulled the trigger back in the day, and the gun would go off, and everything was good. And if it didn't, then we called the smart people to come fix it. So truly, truly honored and humbled to be here today with everyone here, all the audiences, and soon to hear from some of our guest speakers who have some history with us here in Yorktown, and we look forward to sharing and hearing your stories as well. So let's get on with it.
Thank you, Captain Ray. As we sit here today, we look back to where this began. Originally, the MK92 C School, administered by the Navy, was conducted at two locations, San Diego, California, and Damnick, Virginia. With the production of 13 medium-endurance cutters with integrated fire control systems and the upgraded systems installed on the high-endurance cutter fleet, the demand for technicians grew. The Coast Guard, now forced to adopt this course, began to train our own. With a fire control system provided by the United States Navy, Mr. Paul Allen and his team executed the first MK92 Fire Control System C School, comprised of 12 students in the summer of 1987. Since this time, Training Center Yorktown has successfully trained over 1,700 technicians. Graduates of these vigorous 6-month MK92 C School courses receive some of the most advanced technical training available in the Coast Guard. These highly skilled technicians also complete micro and miniature soldering 2M and module test and repair training, earning 15 college credits. Our first guest speaker, a current instructor, having over 28 years of experience with the MK92 fire control system, I would like to introduce Mr. Graham Harris, Senior Chief Electronics Technician retired, to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everybody. Captain, T.O., Commander, and Gunner. I thank you guys for doing this. The MK92 holds a special place in my heart because it's pretty much all I've ever done since I joined the Coast Guard. When I joined the Coast Guard, I did a year as a non-rate, and I got suckered by my XO into putting my name on an A school list. I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I didn't want to move. I didn't want to go anywhere. He forced me to put my name on a school list, so I chose FT because it was going to take at least a year or so before I'd get sent off to school. And then the Coast Guard opens their own FTA school, which actually was in that classroom right up there. And so I ended up 2 months later in the pilot class for FTA school. And that started 1 year of training here at Yorktown. And this school, this gun deck, has been such a part of my life for the last 28 years. This is where I made third class. This gun deck is where I made third class. I was a MK92 technician on Coast Guard Cutter Thetis when I made second class. Coast Guard Cutter Gallatin when I made first class. And here on the gun deck again when I made chief. And actually here again when I made senior chief. So I apparently am going to be buried right about there. But the MK92, it's been 40 years, 44 years. Coast Guard Cutter Bear was commissioned in 1980. And when it was commissioned, it had a MK75 and a MK92 on it. Now at the time, the MK92 was, it was state of the art. It was originally designed by the Dutch, and the United States built it under license for their own use. So the Navy, United States Navy, they had, I think it was 55 frigates that carried them. And then they had 6 hydrofoils that carried them, carried the 76 and the MK92. And the Coast Guard had just started building 13 270s, and they said, you know what, we need something that's better than what we had historically, so we're going to use it. And what makes the MK92 different is everything up to that point had been a gunfire control system, okay? The MK92 is only the 4th fire control system the Coast Guard had used up to that point. They used 2 different systems in World War II. One of them was basically just a gun sight that you stood behind and you moved, right? The second one that they used actually had a radar attached to it for range finding. And that wasn't enough, so as planes got faster and it got harder to hit these moving targets, they came up with what was known as the MK56, but it was also a gunfire control system. And a matter of fact, one of our instructors, Mr. Lindquist, was a MK56 technician for the Coast Guard before he transitioned over to the MK92. But the Mark 92 was different. It was actually a fire control system because it was no longer just guns, it was guns and missiles. So should the Coast Guard choose to, they could put missiles on these boats. We did not have that. We used what was known as the Mark 92 Mod 1, which was specific for the 76. The Navy used missiles on theirs, so their training really wasn't what we needed, if that makes sense. They were getting more than, our technicians were getting more than what they needed. And so in 1987, the Coast Guard had just started modernizing their 378s, and they put 76 millimeters and Mark 92s on them, plus they put on Sea Whiz, and they already had torpedoes and sonar, and it was a great time. Say what you want, but President Reagan, when he has a vision and an unlimited defense budget, the Coast Guard is going to be, it's going to be impressive. And so we had these mini frigates on Mark 90 on our 378s, but unfortunately, after the fall of the Soviet Union, you didn't need all this stuff anymore, so they started pulling stuff off. And at that point in time, the Coast Guard actually had missiles on their ships. They carried Harpoon launchers. I think only 5 of the 378s were outfitted with Harpoon missiles, directed by the Mark 92. The Mark 92 could send targeting information to them, and it was a huge capability that really wasn't needed. So in the 90s, I think the 90s through the 2000s, the Mark 92 really showed what it could do in Coast Guard hands. It never really, in the Coast Guard hands, did what it was designed to do. Instead, as the Coast Guard does, we adapt and modify to fit our needs. And I would say that the Mark 92 has probably saved more lives than it ever took. Anybody that's ever served on a 270 knows that that Mark 92 is spinning 24/7. And there's a reason for that. As far as radars go, what this was designed to do was find missiles flying at low level, in bad weather, in any conditions, small targets. Well, that translates pretty good if I'm trying to find somebody that's smuggling drugs, or if I'm trying to find a vessel in distress, right? The Mark 92 is going to see it before anybody else is going to see it. It has twice the power of any of the other radars that the Coast Guard has on their cutters. And so for 44 years now, it still is the go-to radar if you want to find something small that doesn't want to be found. Unfortunately, it's time for us to let the Mark 92 go. The Mark 92 runs on spare parts, and they are expensive as all get out. And with the Navy no longer funding it, we have to make a decision. There's always something new on the other side, something that does it better, faster, lighter, fewer moving parts, and it's time for the Mark 92 to go. But it doesn't mean I'm not be a little sad about it. I've spent too much time with it. It's been a really good system. It's complex, and of course it takes a long time to teach somebody, which these guys here can attest to. It takes a long time to teach somebody how the Mark 92 works. My time in Yorktown as a student was somewhat miserable. There was no point in getting to know anybody else because they'd already graduate and get their third-class crows while you're still in Unit 2. So we used to joke about MSTs. They were like unicorns. You didn't, by the time you learned their name, they already had graduated and were off in a field somewhere, right, while you still had another 4 months of training. So definitely has been an amazing time, and I'm going to miss it. But thank you all for coming. Thank you for sharing this time with us.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mark 75, 76 millimeter, 62 caliber gun weapon system. First entered Coast Guard service in 1980. The Mark 75, like Mr. Graham spoke of, was installed on the famous class cutter, Coast Guard Cutter Bear. Following this, the 378 high-endurance cutters received this same weapon system during their midlife fleet renovation and modernization phase during the late 1980s. Originally taught in Dam Neck, Virginia, the Mark 75 was first installed at Training Center Yorktown, October 6th of 1995. With vigorous installation and curriculum building, this first class of 12 students convened on August 18th of 1997. Since this convening, Training Center Yorktown has successfully trained over 1,000 technicians. Our next guest speaker, a former Training Center Yorktown instructor with over 22 years of experience in the fleet with the Mark 75 weapon system, I would like to introduce Mr. Walt Flint, Master Chief Gunner's Mate, retired, to say a few words.
Thank you. Thanks for showing up. We appreciate it. I will not have anyways near as much to say as Graham did. Well, my first introduction to the Mark 75 was when I went to GMA school, and they was talking about, this is back in 1976 at Governor's Island, and they were talking about the Coast Guard getting new ships with a new gun system on it. And they described it, it's going to be shoot about 80 rounds a minute, it's going to be a 3-inch, it's going to be liquid cooled, and me and my infinite experience of about 3 months thought, that'll never work. And lo and behold, 44 years after that, we're here with us. So it did obviously work. How they ended up with getting a Mark 75 at Training Center Yorktown was they did decide they needed one to conduct their own classes with, and they started in '97 doing that. Back in 1993, as a GM1 on the Coast Guard Cutter Spencer, we were on our way back from an AMI intervention off the coast of Cape Hatteras. We were off Cape Hatteras. And it was February, and the weather was typical for that time of year there. And lo and behold, the weather shield got caved in on one side of the Mark 75 due to bad weather. We were doing like a 7-bell in about 20-foot seas. So that kind of slowed us down some, so we spun the gun around and put it on the other side. We managed to cave in that side. So we get back to Boston, we take the gun off. It's May, they started taking it apart and looking at it, and about a year after, they determined they can't fix it because the carriage is bent. But a year after that, they determined they need a gun for Training Center Yorktown for a school. That's where the gun came from. Just a point of interest. A lot of fun working on the Mark 75. There's a lot of things you can learn about. There's a little hydraulics, electricity, all kinds of information to be gained from working on it. And there were moments when it was kind of fun. So I appreciate you guys listening to me, and I'm prepared to move on. Thank you very much.
I would like to say thank you to our guest speakers for sharing your experiences, wisdoms, and for your dedication of service to our country. We will now graduate our Mark 92 and Mark 75 students. The students before you in our front row here started their academic journeys here in Yorktown from 3.5 months to 6 months ago for some others. During this time, we have seen every one of you evolve into proficient technicians. Whether here or in Sri Lanka, we have the utmost confidence that you will take what you have learned here back to the fleet and safely and effectively carry out the mission. Captain Ray, Master Chief Liu, would you please assist me in graduating our Mark 92 C School students? ET3, Lance Correll. ET3 Lane Watson. ET1 Jeremy Wilbanks. Thank you, Master Chief Liu. I would now like to recognize our 5 Mark 75 students from Sri Lanka. As our instructors can attest, this is a very challenging course. Topics range from advanced hydraulics to mechanical and even electrical theory. It can be arduous, even with English being your primary language. However, from equilibrators to MOSFETs and everything in between, all of you were able to comprehend and apply these academic feats to the standard. During these challenging skills, lifelong friendships and strong international partnerships were formed. Chief Warrant Officer Vasky, would you please assist Captain Ray in the graduating of our Mark 75 students? Lieutenant Commander Asanka. Lieutenant Commander Duminda. Lieutenant Commander Kumara. Lieutenant Commander Bandara. Lieutenant Commander Jara Rathna. As we celebrate this last significant milestone of Training Center Yorktown's Mark 92 and Mark 75 C schools, we take this moment to extend our gratitude to all those who have contributed to their successes. Looking forward, we embrace a new era of instruction. We will carry forward the legacy of producing a high-quality, skilled workforce in the United States Coast Guard with the introduction of our new weapon system, the Mark 48 and Mark 110 systems. This concludes our ceremony today. Thank you all for attending.